My friend is a sucker when it comes to his family, supporting 3 grown adult children who treated his girlfriend so terribly that she had to get a restraining order, and now he's asked me out, but I'm rejecting him because of the toxic waste that is his family. I, 30F, have this close friend from college who I will call Marlon, 31M. We went to college together, graduated together, and we still hang out on our lunch breaks as our office buildings are just a 5-minute walk away from each other. I have a federal government job and he works for an investment firm. Back in October last year, I allowed Marlon to move in with me after his girlfriend Paige, 29F, broke up with him and kicked him out of her home. Paige is a Jewish, openly bisexual, liberal, tattoo artist who owns her own tattoo parlor, with her own body being beautifully covered in tattoos and jet black hair. Unlike Marlon, though, asserts herself, is able to stand up for herself, and is argumentative at times. A little backstory on why they broke up. Marlon comes from a traditional, evangelical family from Mississippi. His family moved here to the Bay Area sometime in 2020, during the pandemic, so they can be closer to him, or more specifically so they can get him to better support them. Marlon's mom is on welfare, her dad is on Social Security, and Marlon's brother Ryan, 35M, is unemployed, relying on Marlon and his parents to support them. Marlon's parents and brother live in a 2-bedroom apartment, while Marlon himself, as mentioned, now lives in my house but previously lived with Paige. Marlon's family is toxic, treating him with little to no respect, constantly criticizing him, while coddling Ryan. They find reasons to gang up on him, criticize him, and ridicule him despite the fact Marlon is the only one in their family to have ever gone to college, pays for their rent, pays their groceries, their internet, their shopping expenses, etc. During their relationship, Paige and Marlon had this rule that they won't get involved in each other's family matters, provided it does not directly affect them. Paige has repeatedly expressed her concerns to Marlon about his family and how his family treats him, but she opted not to push the matter any further because of their agreement and the fact at the time, as Marlon's family weren't directly interfering with Paige's life. Paige has also generally tried to avoid contact or communication with Marlon's family as she's sickened with the way they treat him. When she tries to stand up for Marlon, Marlon himself shushes her and tells her off for raising her voice to his parents. Additionally, in one of the few times Paige has actually met his family, she got into a fight with Marlon's parents due to Marlon's mom making snide remarks about her tattoos and demanding that Paige take down the Pride flag, Ukraine flag, and BLM banner from her parlor. Marlon's parents also don't like the fact Paige owns her own home after inheriting it from her grandfather. This is because his parents believe it's emasculating that a woman should own her own home and business. Separately, Marlon also previously once told me how his parents don't like the fact that Paige is Jewish, as they will consider accepting her if she removes all her tattoos, again which covers a lot of her body, stops being Jewish, and live the same traditional evangelical life they raised Marlon and Ryan with. They basically wanted Paige to convert and become a trad wife. Marlon did a sucky job at standing up for his ex, as Marlon tried to remedy this by sheepishly asking her to try covering up her tattoos and taking down the flags from her parlor as a compromise to keep the peace. She refused to do so and threatened to break up with him if he kept pushing it. Note that Marlon himself is a genuinely kind, intelligent, and supportive person who was there for me during a difficult time in my freshman year. When his family aren't around, he does thrive as very much his own person, but since his family moved here to California and get back in his life, it's like they just suck the life out of him. Me, Paige, and his other friends have also talked to him about this, urging him to cut them off, but he's just so desperate for their approval and validation that he won't listen. He just keeps saying things like maybe if I try a little harder or they are going to change soon. After a while, it just becomes pointless to even ask. Things changed when Marlon's family started demanding more money from him due to his mom's credit card debt and shopping habits, as well as the fact Marlon's parents used a lot of the allowance Marlon gave them to travel across the country going to campaign rallies during last year's presidential election. When Marlon wasn't able to give his parents any more money, they then went after Paige. Trying to contact her and demanding that as their son's girlfriend, she had to pitch in to support them. Paige just tried to ignore them at first, but things reached a breaking point when Marlon's mother and his brother Ryan came into her parlor, demanding she give them money. According to Paige, they believe that as she's his girlfriend, whatever is hers is also Marlon's, and whatever is Marlon's is theirs, with Marlon's mom screaming that they need money to pay her debts. Paige then called 911 when Ryan jumped the counter and started trying to pry open the cash register. However, as she was on the phone, Marlon's mom punched Paige in the face and started trying to grab the phone from her. Apparently, the barber, who's friends with Paige, across the street saw the commotion that was happening in Paige's parlor, so the barber and 2 of his patrons came over to try and help her. The barber and his friends managed to subdue Ryan, and Paige finished her call with 911 as Marlon's mom started screaming at them, calling the barber, who was pinning down Ryan, the N-word, and calling Paige a Jewish crackware. Marlon's mom and brother were arrested, with Paige telling officers that she was pressing charges as Ryan did just try to rob her place, and Marlon's mom beating Paige did cause her to have a bleeding lip and mild concussion. As for my personal relationship with Paige, we're just acquaintances. We met a couple of times at social events including Marlon, and do have each other on both Facebook and Instagram, but that's about it. After Marlon talked about their breakup, just out of curiosity, I did message Paige and asked for her side of the story as well. She asked me to meet up with her at this tea house in Union Square and told me what happened, basically filling in what Marlon left out. Paige went on to tell me that after she pressed charges and moved to file a restraining order against Marlon's family, Marlon practically started begging her to withdraw her statement, withdraw the restraining order, tell the police she made it all up, despite the fact there was security camera footage which she gave to police, and to just make peace as he didn't want to lose his family. Paige said that Marlon didn't even ask if she was okay or apologize for their actions. Because of this, Paige broke up with Marlon right then and there. Marlon did beg her to not leave him, but Paige reminded him that he consistently kept picking his family over her, he's repeatedly failed to support her, and that she cannot safely be in his life if his family are in his. I thank Paige for sharing her side of the story and apologized for his actions, to which she assured me none of this was my fault. However, before Paige left, as I did take in Marlon to let him move in with me, Paige then took my hand and warned me to keep my distance from his family and warned me of Marlon's mom's weird obsession with having grandchildren. When I got back to my house, as by this time, he was already staying with me, I admittedly snapped at Marlon, demanding that he apologize to Paige for not supporting her and to stop trying to beg her to get back with him, which he eventually did a couple months later. I then talked to Marlon about trying to at least set boundaries with his family, as he won't cut them off completely, pointed out that he earns more than I do, but yet, he can barely support himself as he's basically supporting 3 adults and paying for their debts, their rent, their groceries, and legal bills on his income alone, and he's lost not only a couple of other friendships but even his girlfriend of 3 years, Paige, because of his relationship with them. He seems to have gotten it but is still having trouble setting boundaries, and yes, he's still paying their debts and bills. In case you were wondering, I live in my childhood/family 4-bedroom home which they bought in the 90s. My parents moved up to Seattle 2 years ago, allowing me to live here provided I'm able to take care of the house expenses myself. Fast forward to today, it's been 7 months since Paige broke up with Marlon. He is still living with me, we're still friends, but despite that I'm also requiring him to contribute to household expenses like groceries and contributing to the water bill as he is living with me. A couple nights ago, I was in my living room watching Netflix when Marlon asked me if I'd be willing to go out with him on like an actual date. Back in college, we did on a few occasions talk about the possibility of dating, as in cases where his family is out of the picture. He is a genuinely nice guy and we do spend a lot of time with each other, but nothing came out of it at the time. I then paused the movie to have a serious talk with Marlon, bluntly telling him that if it were just him, by himself, I would be open to it, as when his family is out of the picture, he is a genuinely nice guy and reliably supportive. However, I did point out how almost all of his salary goes to supporting 3 unemployed adults, his family, and I reminded him what happened with Paige. That said, I asked that if, big if, we did get together, get married and have kids, how would he support our family while supporting his parents and brother? Would he set boundaries with his parents? Because, previously, when Paige and I did urge him to set boundaries with his family, he failed. And lastly, I asked him if we were together, would his parents expect me to support them as well? Additionally, I'm mixed race, as my mom is white and my dad is Indian and Catholic, albeit not very religious. That said, me being non-white may be a problem for them and I don't share a lot of their views. Marlon just said things along the lines of he would do his best to try to balance things and he'd only expect me to occasionally help out his parents as a compromise to keep the peace. He also tried reassuring me by saying they wouldn't mind me not being white provided I agree to live by their rules, at least when they're around. Taking a deep breath, I sighed and I told him that unless he fully goes no contact with his parents, not only won't I date him but that any future relationship he has will be doomed to fail due to how overly involved they are in his life. I then got up and went to bed, with the 2 of us not talking about his parents or the 2 of us dating since that night. Additional information and mini update. For clarification, no, I never intended to realistically plan to date or enter a romantic relationship with Marlon. He and I did talk about it yesterday, and we agreed that while he is attracted to me, he also doesn't think it'd be a good idea for us to date, mainly because of my skin color and that being a problem for his mom. Apparently, he briefly mentioned the possibility of us date to his mom, who immediately shot it down because I was too brown for her. One of the very few times that racism actually worked in my favor, I guess. Also, Marlon is still missing Paige and he told me that he's been so and so thinking about trying to get back with her. I reminded him that not only should he leave Paige alone but that given his situation, unless he gets serious help first and cuts his parents out of his life, getting into another relationship would be the worst possible thing he can do. Lastly, yes, Marlon and I do have a written month-to-month lease. He does pay me rent monthly, albeit a small amount compared to other properties in the market, and if I were to cancel its renewal, I'd need to give him 30 days' notice. I, along with a couple of our other mutual friends, have been urging him to find his own place and try to at least do things for himself, hoping that it'd at least start giving him the confidence to start breaking away from his parents. But Update 1. This is a follow-up to my original story from last month and I'm not sure where to begin because of how messed up this has all been. I should probably rewind and explain how things got to this point. So, after Marlon's ex Paige, 29F, broke up with him back in October last year, Paige and I have actually started talking. We have become friends and have started going to the gym together. Paige has also recently started dating a guy from our gym who I'll call Virgil, 33 meters. Turns out Paige and Virgil happen to have gone to the same high school, although a few years apart. In the 7 months since Paige broke up with Marlon, 31 meters, he's been slaving away trying to support his freeloading family. He's basically been a wreck without Paige, coupled with the constant belittling he gets from his family, specifically about him not earning enough. He also went on to say that he missed Paige supporting and comforting him, which she'd usually do every time he had a negative interaction with his family. Despite me and our friend group trying to encourage Marlon to just move on from her, Marlon has kept wanting to talk to Paige to try and get her to come back to him. Throughout the 7 months they've been separated, Marlon has tried coming over to Paige's home and parlor to try and talk to her, but she kept shutting him down and Marlon stopped doing that, at least up until recently, after Paige threatened to call the police and get a restraining order against him if he showed up to her place one more time unsolicited. Marlon has also complained about not being able to support his family's increasing financial demands, debts, medical bills, and shopping habits. Additionally, Marlon's mom has been badgering him and his brother about her wanting to have grandkids. That said, as some of you have commented in my previous post, yeah, I'm pretty convinced that one reason Marlon wants Paige back, or to a lesser extent, be with me, is because he needs someone to help him support his family as well as to serve a buffer between him and them, as well as being like an emotional support person for Marlon himself. In late March, Marlon found out that Paige had a new boyfriend as she's dating Virgil, causing Marlon to panic. He went on a rant saying that he doesn't want to lose Paige, and I reminded him that she already broke up with him, so he and her are done now. Despite this, Marlon did try texting, calling and messaging Paige repeatedly, even creating new accounts to do so, as he just wants to talk to her, and that he believes they can still talk things out, but I told him to stop trying to contact her. I even showed him a video message Paige sent me to show to him in which she explicitly told him to stop contacting her. Fast forward to Saturday, May 17th, I took time off work and was away from home as I went on a date with this guy I met online who I'll call Jack, 55M, as he took me to his cabin up in the mountains for a week. Editor's note: hey, Reddit.go here, is this not a crazy red flag? This guy, who she met online, is almost double OP's age and taking him to a cabin. Oh well, I guess it all worked out for her in the end. But seriously, be more careful with who you trust, guys. Anyways, this tiny detail is irrelevant, so back to the story. While there, I received a notification that someone was at the door. It was Marlon's parents demanding to speak to Marlon. I'm guessing Marlon was away from home at the time because he clearly didn't answer, so I told them through the doorbell camera that Marlon was probably at work or something and asked what they wanted. Marlon's parents basically went on this rant about how disappointed they are in their son for not earning enough to provide for them, as well as them needing more money to pay for Marlon's mom's legal bills, gambling addiction, and medical bills. Marlon's dad also mentioned that he needs Marlon to sign onto and pay for a Denali pickup truck he wants to buy, as the truck Marlon's dad bought himself just got repoed. Marlon's mom then asked if I was dating or sleeping with Marlon. I told her no, that there is nothing is happening between me and him, plus I also mentioned to her that Marlon told me that she didn't want me dating her son because I am too brown for her liking, so that shouldn't be a problem anyway. Marlon's mom then responded, saying that at this point, due to her age and ailing health, she just wants to have grandkids, even if they are mixed race. I caught my breath and just reminded her that I'm just Marlon's friend and legally speaking, I am his landlord, so that's it. She then said that, if Marlon and I do have intercourse, and if I got pregnant, she wants to name our baby, then they left. I was speechless but also felt weirdly sick from that. On Friday afternoon, as Jack and I were leaving, and I turned it back on, had to conserve battery as I didn't bring a charger and wanted to avoid distractions, to find multiple missed calls and messages from Marlon and Tiffany, 30F. Jack dropped me off home, and as I got inside my house, I found Marlon's room completely thrashed, as well as the living room to a lesser extent, and him just sitting there on the couch, looking more miserable than before. I asked what happened, and basically his parents came back over to my place. Marlon opened the door for them, then basically berated him again for not earning enough money to pay for their medical bills, debts, etc. This basically ended in Marlon agreeing to take out a loan to help finance his family, as well as Marlon and his dad going to a dealership for him to sign on to a truck Marlon's dad wanted. When Marlon got home, got so frustrated that he started smashing up the rooms. I then called back Tiffany, who's a close friend of me, Paige and Marlon, and asked her to come over. Tiffany and I then talked to Marlon, comforting him but also urging him again to cut off his parents. Tiffany pointed out that before Marlon's parents came here, Marlon was happy, confident, had a happy and stable relationship with Paige, was doing well at his job, but now he's just a mess. I then also told Marlon about the doorbell conversation I had with his mom, and how his parents are now indirectly starting to affect me as well. Marlon apologized and said he'll try to take care of it. Tiffany, who does come from a wealthy family, did offer to pay for Marlon to go to therapy, but Marlon refused, with him saying that he probably just needs to try something else to win over his parents, with Marlon still justifying their action by saying they're misunderstood. I was going to point out that his family seems to have no sense of boundaries, lack basic human decency, and have no self-control, but at this point, trying to tell him this right now seemed pointless. Tiffany and I then cleaned up the mess in the living room, while Marlon cleaned up his room. Later last night, I spoke with Tiffany and Paige on what we can do. Paige recommended something about trying to reach out to his other relatives who may be willing to support him. I'm leaning towards evicting Marlon from my family home, but I don't want to do that just yet until we could find somewhere for him to stay. I'll post an update if anything significant changes. Update 2, 1.5 months later. Sorry for the late update, had a lot of stuff going on. As quite a few of you have strongly suggested, I, 30F, evicted Marlon, 31 meters, from my home, giving him the 30-day notice to leave, hence he no longer living with me. I recognize now that the Marlon I befriended from years ago, when we were in college, is not the same person I know now. Because of that, Tiffany, 30F, and I organized for Marlon to move in with non-toxic family members of his. I'll explain how we got here. Also, just as a side note, but Paige has seen my posts and is reading them, as well as the comments. She has also posted her own update as well, with a link to that posted above. So, on June 4th, I decided to have a sit-down with Marlon. I told him that given the chaos he's been causing for himself and me, I felt it was best that he moves out, hence I handed him the notice for him to leave. He asked where he was going to go, but I reminded him that he does pay the rent for his parents' apartment, so he could move into the apartment he is already paying for or spend extra money, renting somewhere else. Either way, he had 30 days to organize his own accommodation. He didn't really argue, as he did recognize he overstayed his welcome. I also informed him that I did not want his parents coming to my house ever again. Fast forward to 2 weeks later, still within the 30 days he had to leave, Marlon came home telling me that he got fired. He didn't tell me about this previously, but a few days before his firing, his parents came to his office to berate Marlon again. He didn't say what for, but also to demand that his manager give him a pay raise, as Marlon wasn't earning enough to support the three of them. They of course caused a commotion in the office, Marlon's parents arguing with his manager, and Marlon, rather than stand up to his parents, got scared and started basically begging his manager to give him a raise just to keep the peace with his family. Marlon's parents were escorted out of the office by security, and Marlon's boss had a pretty tense talk with him about this immediately after they were removed. As I understood, Marlon's issues with his family and his breakup with Paige was causing him a lot of stress. Initially, Marlon's boss was understanding and did encourage him to take some time off to take care of himself, but after a while, Marlon seemed distracted and the quality of his work was declining to the point it was starting to affect the productivity of the team. Additionally, before this incident, Marlon's parents have sent emails and left voice messages to Marlon's boss, which also annoyed him, Marlon's boss, but also attracted the attention of upper management. Bear in mind, Marlon had a pretty well-paying job, with most of that money going towards his family's debts, shopping, and expenses. Fast forward to the week before Marlon was supposed to move out. Marlon was still looking for a new place to stay, while also looking for a new job. Tiffany initially offered to let Marlon move in with her for a few days, but her husband Christian shot down that idea immediately, as he understood the situation with Marlon and didn't want him in their house, and Marlon has become more stressed and irrational because of the situation his parents put him in. Anyway, we were celebrating Paige's 30th birthday at Tiffany's home. While Marlon knew about the event, he wasn't invited, for obvious reasons. During the get-together, while we were just hanging out in the living room, Marlon just walked into the house, uninvited. He didn't even ring the doorbell and entered the living room saying hi, awkwardly smiling, trying to act cool, pretending like he belonged there, pretending that what he was doing was somehow normal. Tiffany and I asked him what is he doing here. Marlon initially lied saying that he was invited, but Tiffany noted that she didn't invite him. Marlon then said something along the lines of, "Well, you guys," referring to me and Tiffany, "are my friends, so," to which I cut him off, with me telling him, "Yeah, but you weren't invited and this is for Paige, not you," as I also pointed out that it was incredibly inappropriate for him to be here. He then tried speaking to Paige, who was seated next to her boyfriend Virgil, asking her if they could talk in private. Paige just coldly looked at him and told Marlon no, and Paige telling him to leave. Marlon then just started talking, saying things like, "We can talk about this, and we can still make this work if you just agree to talk to me." Marlon also added that his mom said she'd be willing for Paige to date Marlon again if Paige apologizes to her. Marlon's mom, forgetting Ryan, Marlon's older brother, sent to jail for trying to rob Paige's tattoo parlor last year, and if Paige withdraws her restraining order against his mom. Marlon then also tried to remind Paige that she is a criminal, as well as Paige was once arrested for disorderly conduct after she participated in a Black Lives Matter protest in NYC back in 2020, for which she paid a fine for, so Marlon believes that it wasn't fair for her to have his brother arrested for attempting to rob her parlor. Additionally, Marlon talked about how his mom is still stalking Paige on social media, saw her photos with her new boyfriend Virgil, to which Marlon talked about how his mom doesn't approve of the fact Paige is dating a black man. Virgil is half black, to which Paige interrupted him, angrily shouting back, "I don't give a fudge what your mom thinks." Paige continued saying that she doesn't want to cater to his mom's whims, reminded Marlon of all the anti-Semitic slurs his parents called her. As previously mentioned, Paige is Jewish. In the last few months of her relationship with Marlon, she wasn't happy and that she wants nothing to do with his family. Additionally, Paige also went on to say that she's happy with Virgil, as unlike Marlon, he actually does support her. Marlon then tried to grab Paige's hand as he tried begging again, but Virgil got up and shoved Marlon, causing Marlon to fall back and Virgil telling him to get the fudge back. Virgil then again reminded Marlon that Paige already broke up with him. She already told him he, Marlon, wasn't invited, and she already told him to leave, as Paige held back Virgil. Christian and Andy, another guest, were about to grab Marlon and drag him out of the house. Paige then got up, told them to stop. She then said, "Fine, Marlon, you want to talk, let's talk." For a few seconds, Marlon excitedly smiled with glee, only for Paige to elaborate that she wasn't going to talk about getting back together with him. That simply was never on the table, but instead, she wanted to talk about everything that was wrong with Marlon, specifically his toxic relationship with his parents. As soon as she said that, Marlon just nervously said, "I don't want to talk about that." Paige replied saying, "Well, I didn't want you here either, but here we are." For the next 2 hours, Paige's birthday party then turned into an impromptu intervention, with Paige berating Marlon for his spinelessness, Paige saying things like, "Why couldn't you have stuck up for me when I did that for you? Why can't you stand up for yourself? Do you like getting hurt, and have they, his parents, ever made you happy?" Paige went on to acknowledge that they did have good times when we're together, but that was before his parents showed up back in his life. Marlon in turn switched between trying to defend his parents and saying he didn't want to talk about his parents' toxic behavior, with Marlon saying things like, "I'm just trying to be a good son." Marlon talking about how old and sickly his mom is, and how he needs to take care of his parents because they are family. Marlon also kept repeatedly shouting things like, "I don't want to talk about this, and I did not come here to talk about this," referring to Paige forcing Marlon to confront his problems. Christian chimed in, telling Marlon, "It's not enough that you're setting yourself on fire to keep your ungrateful parents warm, but you're now trying to set 2 other women, me and Paige, on fire as well," followed by Christian telling Marlon to grow up, stop humiliating yourself, and man the fudge up. To which Marlon, while crying, screamed back at Christian, "No." Tiffany then told off Christian for being too cruel to Marlon, to which Christian reminded Tiffany that Marlon isn't one of her students. Tiffany works as a preschool teacher, so she should stop treating him like a child. Tiffany and Christian then got into a separate argument because of this, as Christian reminded Tiffany that the two of them have a kid on the way, hence she can't keep spending her money to help Marlon. Towards the end, Marlon was just this crying, blubbering, incoherent mess, and saying he just wanted things to go back to normal, while keeping his family happy. Paige then composed herself and asked Marlon about his Aunt Grace, who is the older sister of Marlon's mom, asking him if he still had contact with her. Marlon said yes, as he still had her on Facebook as well as having her emails saved somewhere on his phone. Paige then told Marlon to unlock his phone and give it to her, which he did so she could look for Grace's email address. Paige explained to me and Tiffany that Grace was one of the few kind and non-toxic family members Marlon had. She told us of how Marlon previously talked about how when he was growing up, Grace used to protect him from his mom's abuse, and again was one of the few members of his family who was actually nice to him. Paige then asked Marlon if Grace still lives in Mississippi. They live in Montana now, said Marlon. Paige then said she'll try to get in touch with Grace and recommended that we ask her if she'd be willing to take in Marlon. She went on to say that if Marlon doesn't leave, she'd have no choice but to get a restraining order against him as well. Paige and Virgil then thanked us for throwing her a party, and left. I turned to Marlon. I was about to ask him what was he thinking coming here, causing a scene, ruining the party, ask for what he hoped to gain, but I thought to myself it was probably pointless to ask, so I didn't. Over the next couple of weeks, Tiffany, Paige and I made contact with Marlon's Aunt Grace. Paige explained the situation to her, while Tiffany and I organized the logistics of moving Marlon's stuff to his aunt's place. Tiffany paid for the shipping of Marlon's stuff to his aunt's place. Marlon did tell us that he didn't really want to leave California as he wanted to stay close to his parents, to which I simply asked him, okay, if you don't move in with your aunt in Montana, who are you going to stay with and who's going to support you? Marlon sat there looking at me and Tiffany for an awkward 10 seconds, and he finally said, I was actually kinda hoping you'd cancel my eviction and help pay for, to which I cut him off, telling him that helping him move was the last thing I was going to help him with. I also reminded him that Paige was going to take legal action against him and get a restraining order if he didn't leave, and he has no job so he won't be able to pay for anything. Tiffany asked if Marlon's parents couldn't also just move to Montana with him. Marlon explained that's likely not going to happen as his mom and Aunt Grace hate each other, as well as Marlon telling us of how his mom is low-key terrified of Grace, although he didn't necessarily know why. On Friday, the 4th of July, it was time for Marlon to move out of my home, and he assured us he was well enough to drive up to Montana himself. I told him Tiffany and I will organize for the rest of his stuff to be shipped over to his aunt's place. Marlon thanked me and Tiffany for supporting him and apologized for his behavior as well as the problems he caused us. We accepted his apology, but I told Marlon I didn't want to do anything more to help him past this point. Tiffany also apologized to Marlon on behalf of her husband Christian, as Tiffany felt Christian was being too harsh on Marlon. So now Marlon is gone and Paige helped me clean up and organize the guest bedroom in my home, where Marlon used to stay. With him, the house does feel more relaxing and peaceful. Honestly, I feel less stressed now that he's gone. Lastly, given that Paige has been more involved in these events more than I have, I agreed that if anything else new happens or if there's any new updates, I'll let Paige post about it herself. Commenter 1, Tiffany is going to raise a Marlon if Christian doesn't overcome her enabling. Sad. Commenter 2, as delusional as Marlon seems, I would be surprised if he comes back to help Mommy Dearest more and keeps bankrolling her. Marlon needs some aggressive counseling.